So when you do history, you talk history. So you talk history, and then that is what you do. Others do their own thing. If it's a politician, it's also is to speak about politics and then explain issues about his party or things about government policies and so on. If you are a reverend minister, you also deal with the scriptures. So everybody and then the road they have taken for themselves. So mine is to speak, explain, and also help people to understand how things went about, so that they can make a meaningful interpretations out of it.
Mr. Sopo, how is the NDC doing as a party?
The NDC is fine. I mean, President Mahama has started on a good footing. And I believe Ghanaians have come to appreciate that indeed. President Mahama meant well for this country. I like the fact that the President continued to admonish his appointees that indeed, in spite of everything, one of the things that he must demonstrate is humility and respect for the Ghanaians. Because without the Ghanaians, marching up to the poll on the 7th of December, voting for the NDC emphatically, we wouldn't be here. So that particular admonishment for me, it's quite very key, and it's very critical if indeed the NDC will be succeeding or the NDC will be doing well. Because one of the things I've said is Ghanaians, apart from all the difficulties that they have been confronted with, one of the things that you can't take from the Ghanaians when you disrespect them. So I think President Mahama have started on a very good notes. I mean, he made a promise that he's going to deliver one of the most lean governments under the Fourth Republican dispensation. He has done it. President Mahama have continued to demonstrate that indeed, whatever that he said prior to the 2024 election was not just a mere talk or empty rhetoric. He's walking the talk. So far, so good.
And one of the major issues we are looking at this morning has to do with the Kotoka International Airport. And as you may be aware, yesterday news broke about a case that had been sent to the Supreme Court, basically seeking to compel governments to rename the Kotoka International Airport. For many of you who are quite young, it was initially the Accra International Airport before it became Kotoka International Airport. And the Supreme Court is being asked to speak on the matter. And already, some are making reference to some other cases that have come in the past, like the 1st December case where the Supreme Court had to deal with whether we should be celebrating, using public funds to celebrate a holiday that marks a coup in light of the various principles of our current constitution, which basically makes such conduct an offense. And so that is one thing that will be engaging our minds this morning. Let me welcome also Nanayao Sapon. He is a senior political aide to Alan Kojo Chairman. Nanayao, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, brother.
I took their initial views, not on the subject matter that we'll be discussing, but how are you doing?
I'm good. You look good in your tie.
Thank you.
I love the part when you said those of you who are young. I was wondering, because we are all very young people.
I see.
And we are just fortunate that we have some history books to read, and at least we still have some of the very old men who are available to tell us the history of Ghana. I think moving towards the celebration of our independence, I think that we should be able to come clear and come clean on the history of our nation. I am not a historian, but there are so many school of thoughts when it comes to the history of Ghana. It depends on the political divide which you belong and how it sounds in your ears. Yeah. And I think that we will not be doing the next generation any good if we continue on this tangent.
And I'll start the discussion with Kweku Dankwa. I mean, just to put in context, sometime in 1966, this is the message that Ghanaians then heard on Radio Ghana. It's the voice of Kotoka saying, "Fellow citizens of Ghana, I have come to inform you that the military in cooperation with the Ghana police have taken over the government of Ghana today. The myth surrounding Nkrumah has been broken. Parliament is dissolved and Kwame Nkrumah is dismissed from office. All ministers are also dismissed. The Convention People's Party is disbanded with effect from now. It will be illegal for any person to belong to it. We appeal to you to be calm and cooperative. All persons in detention will be released in due course. Please stay by your radios and await further details." And that was what set in motion the process that resulted in the setting up of the National Liberation Council. And Mr. Ankra, first, do you find the current conversation that has been triggered by the case that has been sent to court, first, do you find it to be relevant? That is one. And number two is, where does General Kotoka stand, in your opinion, in the history of Ghana?
Yeah, so the 1966 coup actually is something that has contested views with specific reference to the people of the country, because if you belong to Dankwa tradition, then you are likely to support the coup, simply because if you look at the independence journey throughout the beginning of from 1948 all the way to 1952, Nkrumah was seen as an outsider who just came in, and then joining the UGCC, moving out to form his own party, the CPP, Convention People's Party. And then in 1951, first elections that we had, winning the election, becoming a prime minister from 1952 all the way to 1957 when we had the independence, and continuing again as a prime minister until 1960. And from the 1960 to 1966, becoming an executive president of this country. Throughout all these moments, the UP tradition, whose grandchildren are today NPP, were in opposition. And also, Nkrumah also did a lot, but politically, there were some policies that he brought that were actually inimical to, I would say, his own interest as well as the opposition. So, for instance, if you look at the policy of Preventive Detention Act, for instance, which actually was stifling free speech and was also incarcerating certain opposition elements. Even though I, for instance, understood some of the circumstances under which
around the period where there were lots of attempts on his life.
Yes. So apart from that, if you look, I used a covered document where about about getting to 16 bomb throwing attempts, some from various Ghanaian newspapers, and then also Nkrumah fearing of a lot of divisions with regards to how political parties have been founded on religious ground and then on ethnic lines, will also come with the Avoidance of Discrimination Act, which will force all the political parties to join, and so on. Then you also talk about Nkrumah's own the Alien Deportation Act, which came, and many of his opponents within the Muslim Association Party, like Elijah Medu, Baba Lamin, even some also even affecting people like Salami Lagos, Aliu Alau, and others who were deported out of this country. In fact, it affected Anglican Archbishop of Accra, Roosevelt. It affected Bankole Bright, who was a deputy editor of Daily Graphic, and so on. So within those periods, the opposition were like they had no other opportunity. Then the amendment of the Constitution, which also put this country from 64 into a one-party state. These were the things that really the opposition saw as an attempt to cripple them and also do away with all opportunities of democratic right of the opposition being represented in government and so on. So when this coup d'etat came, in spite of Nkrumah's good leadership, in spite of his economic policies, which was quite okay, except by 64, the economy has started tanking. In spite of that, these were some of the things that historically, if you look at Nkrumah's legacy, that were not favorable for him. And as a result, the opposition who were suffering from some of these policies were not in favor of Nkrumah. So when the coup came, it was really something that was like a breather of space for them.
In fact, just to cut you, just a point here. I'm reading from the Ghana coup by Afrifa, one of the architects of the coup. He actually says that the coup d'etat is the last resort in a range of means whereby an unpopular government may be overthrown. But in our case, where there were no constitutional means of offering a political opposition to the one-party government, the armed forces were automatically made to become the official opposition to the government.
Yeah, so the armed forces themselves, people like Afrifa and then the police architect, Halley. For example, Halley was worried about the position of the presidential guard, okay, which has become an elite form of protective force within the governance, because they know about the original police, they know about the army. You talk about the other guard, also elite guard within the army itself, the one that was led by Zeneligu and others. So if you look at the whole architecture, the police were also peeved. They were complaining about allowances, their uniforms, and other opportunities that they're supposed to have. So was the army. So some of these people, there was some element of jealousy. There was also an element of pain on some of them, as how could we have the original security agencies, which is the Ghana Armed Forces, as well as the police, and you have a special presidential guard who have different salary and enjoying better than the original state-sanctioned security agencies. So these were some of the things that would force someone like Afrifa, who is Santa Clausian like me, to really go in there to do what he did. But then, the coup itself, around that time, was popular for the opposition, right? It was quite popular for the opposition because it opened the opportunity for a new kind of government to emerge. And if you look at the membership of the National Liberation Council, you realize that majority of the opposition elements were the people that formed the government. Majority, from Joe Appiah, Edward Akufo-Addo, William Ofori-Atta, most of the people within the UP tradition were the people that became, in fact, they became beneficiaries of the 1966 coup. And that will open the gate for the 1969 constitution, where the UP tradition will also emerge as a winners of the 1969 elections, which is K.A. Buzia becoming the prime minister of this country in that election. So what I see is that the coup, on one hand, if you belong to the UP tradition, you will jubilate and you will go and take all the arsenals of negativity of Nkrumah's regime to show why the coup was a good thing. If you are also within the CPP tradition, you will also speak about the fact that it was unconstitutional, because any coup against a constitutionally elected government is a crime against the state. Particularly when you are caught, you will be hanged or you will be sent to a firing squad, as it is, because it's a capital punishment to really topple a constitutionally formed government. So that is there. But when you win, then you are free. So for people within Nkrumah tradition, this was a government which was performing well, and their case today has even been amplified, particularly after the overthrow of Nkrumah. This nation has not been able to put in the kind of pedestal Nkrumah was really pushing the country towards. For instance, if you look at industrialization, Nkrumah was almost going to upwards 23%, and we are moving to upwards. You can talk about a lot of factories and companies that Nkrumah put up in this country. Okay. And we are moving there. Immediately after the coup, we have been going down one regime after the other, and we have achieved what we call the deindustrialization, that kind of the premature deindustrialization, where you are trying to move up to industrialize, and you couldn't, and then you fluctuate, and you are not able to go back. this has affected the base of our economy up till now. So many people, that is where they see that was the 66 coup really needful.
I mean, I'll come back and engage you a bit more on that, but let me welcome to the discussion Oliver Baka Vomawo. He is a legal practitioner. He is with the Democracy Hub as well. Oliver, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Great, thank you. I appreciate being here.
I want to first start off with just some news that we have coming through. It's a statement that has been issued by the Convention People's Party. It's signed by one Kwame Butchio, and simply making the point that they have not given their blessing for such a legal action to take place, and that they are going to take steps to have their names taken off this particular legal action. I just want us to just briefly just get that out of the way and get into the discussion proper. Has this come to your attention, and what do you make of that?
I actually also saw it this morning, and I don't know how to react to it because I'm now unaware. Previously been involved in a matter representing the CPP, where other individuals and groups also came up saying that they were CPP, and for which reason we have a court decision which was for the first time in the public, CPP versus CPP. So to be honest, I'm a bit sad that this important conversation will be marred by continuous internal divisions within the CPP. And we at Democracy Hub, are a bit saddened by that. But again, let me investigate a bit more so I can speak more concretely on that.
I mean, that is fine. And so now let's focus a bit more on the main issues that have come up so far. And the history that Mr. Ankra was tracing to us, I mean, we got to the point where, and I read to him a Free First book where he had made a point that there was simply no way of taking Nkrumah any constitutional means of having another president aside from Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And there are those who justify the coup that took place on that basis. And you look at some of the historical materials. I've seen publications from the Legon Observer where Kotoka's death, for instance, he had basically become a cult hero of sorts. From your analysis of the historical material, do you share that view that there was a dominant view around that time to an extent that saw him in that light, and particularly after his death as well?
When you look at the lawsuit that we have filed and you go through the list of authorities you've mentioned, there was painstaking research to be able to establish properly the historical record. Now, the essence of the lawsuit isn't there. But I'm very mindful that we do not open the Pandora's box into that kind of conversation. Because there's not a single overthrow in this country which has not been justified. In fact, in the last administration we had in this country, it took all civil society, all the prominent civil society, to organize a press conference at Coconut Grove where they were calling on the military and people not to overthrow the last government. The feeling was that, the government had gotten to a point where so many Ghanaians were calling for its overthrow. So that's the Pandora's box. History is written.
I think we may have lost Oliver a bit. We'll try and reconnect to him. Oliver, are you there? Can you hear me? Okay, I think we'll try and establish the connection and pick up from where the point he was making there. Mr. Ankra, I saw you nodding already in agreement with that point about the differences in perspective and about that. But I mean, the fact still remains that he was quite a celebrated figure. He was one that had been seen as a savior at the time.
So you see, events happen at a specific time, and you look at the context around that time. And as I said, this was a period where a certain group of people were very happy about what has happened. And as Afrifa himself said in his work, if you read Major Okran's work, he also gives the same view. If you read Peter Baker's book on the whole, which for me was one of the most objective work on it, it's called Operation Kuchop. If you read it, he also gives you the insight about what was happening within the country. But the thing is that at any given time, as we speak today, should somebody do a coup, you will get a group of people who would run to town and support it. Because they know that once a coup has taken place, it means a regime change is in the offing.
Okay.
So even if it's not going to go their way, they think that there will be another opportunity for reorganization of elections. So human beings are like that.
Okay.
That is not to say nothing wrong did happen under Nkrumah. He had his positives, which many Ghanaians today will agree that indeed the way people perceived him and the overthrow, indeed he performed far better than the regimes after him.
Okay, I'll come back and have a bit more discussion. Oliver, back on the line now, and you were making a point about, you're drawing parallels between how other coups had also equally been celebrated as well. If you could continue from that point for me.
Yes. So what I was talking about is that we have to be very careful as constitutional democracy not to open the Pandora's box as to what we feel which coups are justified or which coups are not justified. We have taken a forward march to determine that the constitutional democracy is the way forward. What was overthrown in 1956 was a constitutional democracy. There can be a question as to whether, and that question pertains even in respect of the Fourth Republic, whether the substance of that constitutional democracy deserves improvement. Our key commitment as a people is that we would improve our democracy through the means of that democracy itself. Now, it's completely untrue, the suggestion that some have made, that Nkrumah could not leave office other than a non-democratic means. It's untrue. The 1960 Constitution was amended by Act 224. Act 224 made certain constitutional changes which were in line with the Constitution. All those powers were exercised by a competent parliament. Now, anybody who wanted to remove Nkrumah, all the person had to do was to mobilize a political project that would win enough seats in parliament in order to be able to ensure that that parliamentary supremacy that allowed some of the things to happen would also go in their favor. In the same way, even in the Fourth Republic, there's so many people that are against this de facto two-party system. So many people have fought for a third force. If those people were allowed to do a coup, we would then tomorrow be justifying that, there was no way to get rid of the NDP and NDC, otherwise that's through these things. We should not invite those discussions. Now, for us now, it is not a conversation as to, again, resurrect the conversation as to whether Nkrumah was a better president than others. That's the leave for people to judge. And even though I hold that view, this case itself is narrowly different. It is focused on whether or not the airport is named after Kotoka for his role in the overthrow of the 1960 Constitution. That's the key evidential question the court has to answer. Now, if that fact is answered, consequentially, it is up to the Supreme Court to decide whether or not they want to abide by their previous reasoning in the 31st December case, which is that the state cannot engage in the glorification of persons who overthrow constitutional government. Okay. Now, if then somebody wants to lead an inquiry into whether or not there was in fact a constitutional government, that question itself is probably answered by the record. That there was in fact a constitution in place, and that constitution, if the suggestions were that was powers, so much powers was given to the president, well, those are the same accusations we are making about the 1992 Constitution. That the president is too powerful. Does that justify a coup d'etat in the current system? Absolutely not. So that's the kind of, debate conversation that I don't think we should be inviting. We ought to be having a conversation as to what should represent us as a people. Is it reflective of the democracy we want to build? The person will be rewarded solely on the basis of coup d'etat. That's the question we want to engage in.
How do you respond to those who make the point that, that could potentially open the box entirely, because we could extend it to other individuals who have facilities named after them, who have engaged in various acts which sin against the principles of the Constitution. And I have even seen some, not even just limited to Rawlings, but also make reference to Kwame Nkrumah himself to say that, look, our current Constitution frowns upon one-party state completely. It frowns upon human rights abuses, which some have been documented within that period, to make the point that, again, would people be justified to make similar calls for other facilities named after those individuals as well?
Let me make 2 points in respect of that. The first directly answers the question. The second goes into this accusation of human rights abuses. if you just evaluate the record of the previous government on human rights abuses, there has not been such widespread and systematic attempt to bring down our democracy, in my opinion. And in fact, so many people agree to this. When you take the National Reconciliation Commission's report, the coup plotters themselves protected over some of the most horrific human rights abuses that human history has ever recorded. Persons were so tortured that hot tea was being poured into their eyes on the direct orders of Afrifa and Kotoka. These are things that are part of the historical record that this country has seen. So I am trying not to get into this comparison of who was a worst human rights abuser. Nkrumah could not have been accused, could never be accused of that, in my opinion. Now, on the question of the Pandora's box, this is the kind of box that is already opened. The 1992 Constitution does not allow the state to glorify, to use public funds to glorify any person who is involved in the overthrow of a constitutional government. That's it. What that means is that if a person overthrows a military regime, the 1992 Constitution has no say in the matter. If a person is named, and we have to be very clear what the court is saying, that the question is not whether or not a person was one involved in the coup d'etat whose name has been applied to something. That's not what the court is saying. If the purpose of the naming of the edifice is for their overthrow of a constitutional government, that is the intended and sole purpose, or the purpose of it, then for that reason it cannot stand. So you have to open the Pandora's box. This is what the constitutional democracy admits. That any person who is rewarded for their role, not for any other thing. So to give an example, if the Kotoka International Airport had been named after Kotoka because we like his name and no other reason, there's no remedy in the courts to be able to correct that. But if it was named for him because of his role in 1966 coup, then that can be removed. So that's where the line is drawn. And I think that the court is competent to be able to show us that, this is what the Constitution says, and that's all we can do.
And Oliver, I mean, what do you make of the point that some make that a monument could be put in place for one reason, but it could mean other things? And so let's keep the name not as a reminder of a man who overthrew a constitutional government, but as a reminder that this is an act that we should not engage in. I have never seen anywhere where a person uses the oppressor's name to name a building, to say that we have named it in his honor to remind us not to be like him. If that is the valid thing, that is for the court to tell us. But I would be much surprised that Germany would wake up and name buildings after Hitler as a reminder that Germans should not be like Hitler. I mean, I think it's strange reason, would you not say? I mean, the difference will be the fact that the times at which it was constructed, and so given the context in which it was put up, but it has grown to mean something else over the period, if you could look at it that way.
I mean, I think, again, it's an evidential issue, a factual issue. As to whether or not when we think of Nkrumah or Kotoka on the airport, what do we think of? Has it outgrown that meaning? Okay? For me, I think that we have produced enough historical record before the court to show that enduring endorsement of the 1966 coup that overthrew the 60 Constitution continues to remain. That's the matter that the court must find as a matter of fact. And if they don't reach that conclusion, at least the principle of law will remain that no, if you are involved in the coup d'etat, then democracy cannot honor you if that coup d'etat overthrows the Constitution. That is the voice the 1992 Constitution speaks with. On the question as to, the continual role of monuments that reflect the past and all of that, if you pick up, again, this issue that we have brought, we have gone into even America, where cases that have looked at the Confederacy in the American Civil War, and the place of monuments that are honoring Confederate generals, as to whether or not they reflect constitutional values of anti-racism in the U.S. We have looked into Germany around the legacy of Nazism. We have looked into Ukraine and this attempt at the Communist Party, a communist influence in Ukraine. Several societies have reckoned with their past. And that conversation, Ghana is not unique to Ghana. And that's why we are taking the painstaking effort to research, to show that continual conversation as to what should represent us as a people in respect of our history should not be a closed door. And at every point in time, that conversation must continue. And this case would still be brought, even if Kotoka was not on the airport and was on the street in Malacca market.
And finally, before you go, Oliver, from Kotoka to what?
Well, I mean, I think that conversation ought to be open. What we are saying is that the original name was Accra International Airport. And so we remove Kotoka's name. In fact, if you look at the civil aviation indicators for the airport, it is still APC. After the old name, Accra International Airport. It wasn't changed ever. But if it was to ask me personally, and this is not part of the suit, I believe that it is only fair that it is named after Nick Naboni, the third, who led the 1948 boycott against AWAP, the Association of West African Merchants, that inherently led to independence. Because of the myth of the big states, we have not been able to honor individuals like him. And in fact, I have been to Kumasi, I've said, and I've seen that most monuments are named after chiefs and royalty there. I think it is important that Accra also looks in this face and stop naming every entity after politicians and give recognition to some of the indigenous of the land on which we are fortunate to be on.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. You just heard from Oliver Baka Vomawo. He is a convener, Democracy Hub. He's also a legal practitioner, and as you may be aware by now, Democracy Hub, together with the Convention People's Party, have filed a case in court seeking a renaming of the Kotoka International Airport. Let me come now to Mr. Sapon on this issue. I mean, where do you stand on all of this discussion? I mean, it does appear that as a nation, we need to have some consensus, and a conversation is the only way at arriving at that consensus on what our history is and what it means for us, even in terms of how it reflects in national monuments.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. But it's unfortunate that our historians are not doing us any good. Their views are based, as I said earlier, on which political divide they belong to. But they do not look at the reality of the issues. Now, you would want to name a monument after certain individuals. What goes into it should be their contribution to society and the impact they have made to society. How relevant have they been to the growth and development of the society which they belong to? And so you would take Kotoka, you would take the Kwame Nkrumah. If you want to do the comparison, you do not only do the wrongs, but you do the goods. What were the goods of Kotoka? I mean, the only thing I have ever read about him was a coup. I don't know if you've read any other thing about Kotoka.
I mean, it's just basically the coup, and we know that
basically the coup,
and there was a counter coup, and he was killed
and
on a site close to the current airport.
That's it. The intrinsic, I know, we were sick, I know. Basically, that's what it is. You understand? So, at the point, they were talking about the fact that there were some decisions or some stands by Kwame Nkrumah that they thought was not helping the nation. But have we also taken our time to look at the good of Kwame Nkrumah? His contribution to national development, his contribution to the building of Africa, his contribution that had impact that extended into other parts of the world. How high he raised the flag of Ghana. Have we been able to do that comparison? And if we have, to what effect is it that we would name a runabout after Kwame Nkrumah and name the entry point to Ghana after somebody who just took part in a coup d'etat? I am of the view that we should sit down properly as a nation have a national dialogue. I mean, my brother is a historian. He has his side. If you read when the debate started coming up, the persons like Professor Michael Quay also had their stand. It belongs to, depends on where he sits, the UP tradition.
Yeah.
You understand? Because at a point, they were the main beneficiaries of whatever Kotoka did. And so they would want to protect the name of Kotoka. Of course, there are other persons. I think in 2010, Osahini Boachijan, I don't know where he is now.
He's passed on. Yes, he's passed on. And just for context, he was one of the architects of the 79.
Yes, cool.
One of the spokesperson for the AFRC.
For the AFRC. I think 2010, he wrote a piece that had to do with this whole renaming of Kotoka, and he had the presence of Professor Bidua Kosa and others coming in, and you would notice that there has been a call for a change. Now, when you have traveled to any part of the world, when you get there, the name of the airport is the first thing you look at. And as human beings as we are, we try to find out why that name was given.
I mean, it's basically a monument that you can't avoid.
You can't avoid
You just
it.
enter the country. So
you come to Ghana. Let's say you are from
Canada.
So let's say you're from Canada. You get to Ghana, and then you would want to Google why Ghana's airport was named after Kotoka. And then what comes up is that he was the one that led the coup d'etat of 1966.
Yeah.
That's it. You understand?
Yeah.
So we need to look beyond that. The airport is one of the most important infrastructure of this nation. In fact, in Africa, in our part of Africa, the West Africa, I think we have the best airport. I've been to some few nations, and our brothers from Nigeria are always jealous of our airport. But unfortunately, people are always talking about the name we have given to it. What has been the economic impact that the name of Kotoka draws to Ghana? Have you had tourists come to Ghana to study, read, or want to view the Museum of Kotoka? No. Of what economic benefit is the name? We need to also look at all of this.
Okay.
What has been, even after death, what is the impact? What benefits is the country drawing? Let us not be so sentimental and so emotional about this whole thing. We give names for reasons.
Okay.
You understand me? We
Right.
give names for reasons. I know Kotoka has family, but my question is, what has been his impact to this nation? What has been his contribution to national development?
Okay.
If we want to limit it, but you know, the surprising aspect of this is we have people who would, from the same UP tradition and other traditions, that would demonize the Rollins, demonize the Champons, and will come to praise Kotoka for the same crime or sin committed. How different is it?
I mean,
Rollins could be put in the good books of Ghana for allowing the 1992 constitution to come back, restoring the constitutional rule. A champion, at least, is praised for certain initiatives that he did. Can same be said about Kotoka? These are the things we need to have a clear look at.
I mean, to be fair to the late general, I mean, his life was cut short.
No, I mean, No, but life cut short is cut short.
Yeah.
You understand? If you didn't exist, you didn't exist.
All right.
You understand? We should not. That's what I'm saying. We should be emotional about it. All
right.
apologies to his family.
Yeah.
If they are watching, I mean, they shouldn't hold this against us. But reality is reality. We need to speak to facts.
Okay.
Because our children, the youngsters, are growing up to learn. So if we are saying that we're the pride of democracy in Africa, and that we believe in the rule of law, and that we restored constitutional rule and we are being praised for it, then we should be able to hold on to it.
Let me come to Delali. I've seen a publication just about a week ago, the national chairman of the NDC, Johnson Esiedu Nketia, making the point quite forcefully that left to him alone, he would have changed the name. Is that a view that you share as well?
Good morning and good morning to your cherished viewers who are watching us this morning, and my brothers as well. I think one of the, well, to some extent, I shared the view of the national chairman of our party. The reason being that, for instance, I will continue to talk about the fact that Kwame Nkrumah is the African man of the millennium. I will continue to tout some of the, what I call the visible, verifiable achievement of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. You can talk about the Akosombo Dam, you can talk about Tema Harbour, you can talk about the Tema Motorway, you can talk about the University of Science and Technology and other what do you call it, achievement of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. It means that whatever achievement that Kwame Nkrumah is credited to Kwame Nkrumah basically have outlived him. It means that even generations yet to be born, they will come to appreciate what he has done. And such a man of such pedigree. And obviously, if you are naming, for instance, Kotoka International Airport, after a man who basically truncated, right, what obviously was to become Ghana revolutionary industrialization, it becomes a bit problematic. I mean, people view that, okay, fine, you continue to talk about the fact that Kwame Nkrumah is the African man of this, he has done this, but for the fact that his regime was truncated, Ghana probably would have been rocking shoulders with other developed countries and what have you. And so when it becomes more or less like you are naming what do you call it, such facility like Kotoka International Airport after a man who basically truncated the regime of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, it becomes a bit problematic. Probably people will say it's a bit policy incoherent and like approbate and reprobate sort of. But like I said, it's a healthy debate. I mean, people will express divergent opinion. Like my brother said, if you listen to the likes of Professor Michael Quay, who is more or less like an unrepentant UPist, anytime he gives an opportunity, obviously he will justify the basis upon which Kotoka was named, the airport was named after Kotoka. So it's obvious that, I mean, this legitimate debate or this consensus that has been raised, I mean, it's something that will linger on for a while. I mean, I believe that Ghanaians are of the view that for somebody who truncated what do you call the regime of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and yet he's being named after airports, which more or less is like the gateway to Ghana. In itself, it's in
fact, during research for this discussion, I came across the National Liberation Council decree, the General Kotoka Trust Decree, and the introductory part that explains why the law has been enacted to celebrate him. It says here, whereas the government and the people of Ghana wish to demonstrate their gratitude for their liberation and for the rebirth of freedom in Ghana, which was achieved by these gallant men by creating a trust to provide for committing to posterity the memory of the late Lieutenant General Emmanuel Kwesi Kotoka and the others who fell, and to provide for their widows and children. I want to ask you this, that many will say that potentially this discussion is taking place because of the party in power and the fact that, well, if we are going to place the MPP as successors of the UP, then automatically Nkrumah is likely to be embraced by the NDC than the MPP. And we actually saw various actions under the previous administration that many said was more or less wearing off the image of Nkrumah to an extent.
I think this I stand to be corrected, but I doubt this is the first time these debates have come up relative to why Kotoka International Airport was named after Kotoka. I think it's something that keeps on reoccurring. I agree with you. The perception out there that the NDC is more like tilted towards, or more or less have, what do you call it, a certain soft spot when it comes to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I mean, which is grounded on certain facts, based on the fact that we believe that Kwame Nkrumah have done exceedingly well when it comes to the championing of development in this country. But the fact of the matter, like I said, I mean the UP tradition, which the MPP basically came out from, has shown countless without numbers that indeed they are not, I mean, a political party that will obviously celebrate somebody like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. But I also have no doubt that there are certain individuals within the UP tradition who basically applaud the works of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I keep on saying this. You see, history is there to guide us. But you see, one thing that is very significant is the fact that if you are talking to me about the pedigree of an individual in 1960, I mean 1957, 1970, probably which I wasn't born by then, one thing that is more instructive for me, it's what are the visible things that can be credited to that particular individual. So as I sit down here, a child of 15 years, right, if you are even talking to that child to convince that child the pedigree of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, even without making reference to the history, you can point to some of the things I call they are visible. You can tell the child that, listen, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology is the handiwork of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the Akosumodam, the Tamamotowe, right, the Tamahabo. So even in spite of the fact that that child reading a literature, right, that make what do you call that lay claim to the achievement of the Kwame, that child will be able to point to all these obvious things. But so when you are telling that child that the man that you are touting, the man that you are crediting with all these projects that we are talking about, what do you call it, regime was truncated by this individual, it becomes what I call illustration of confusion that, you claim that Kwame Nkrumah have done all this, and yet you have named an airport after an individual that truncated the regime of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. It sounds a bit confusing, but I'm saying there are also people who could hold a certain legitimate claim that, listen, we believe that the topple of Kwame Nkrumah regime in 1966, right, was justifiable, which for me, I don't think there can be any justification in truncating Dr. Kwame Nkrumah regime. But there are people who are entitled to the opinion, right? Yeah. So, like I said, it's a debate. It's a healthy debate. I believe that, I mean, as time goes on, we'll be listening to a lot of historians, giving a different perspective relative to why they think that it was justified for Kotoka International Airport to be named after Kotoka. But like I said, there is no any amount of justification, right, linking Kotoka in toppling Kwame Nkrumah regime and saying that that is the basis upon which naming Kotoka after Kotoka International Airport after him is justifiable. I don't think there can be any justification whatsoever.
I mean, Mr. Ankrai, is it healthy that...
Let's just try this. Let us not make it seem as if it is... The debate is now because of the party that is in government. Exactly, yeah. During President Kufuor's time, this debate came up. You understand? I remember, I think he made a statement on it in one of his international encounters, in which he felt that, listen, let's leave the name as it is. I think the name, that the changing of Kotoka name, the KIA, has been in and out.
It's been a raging debate for a while now.
For a while. So let's not
That's fine.
make it seem as if it's now.
Mr. Ankrai, the point I was coming to is it healthy that, I mean, every once in a while, we attempt to take a second look at what the people who lived in the times felt and manifested, and to try to let it appear to be something else. And back to what I had read earlier, I mean, this was how the framers of the law, I mean, if you even look at the trustees and all of that, why there were chiefs from different parts of the country, from various regions, all on board and all of that. I mean, is that what you historians say, revisionism?
Yeah, it is not some people at the time. When you are in government, chiefs, when you call them, they will come. So it is not that it is a national thing. There are a lot of public gathering, a lot of chiefs left with them alone, they won't go. But then they are also part of the governance, the distribution of the public goods. If you wanted to reach your traditional area, you must be seen visibly be seen to be participating in governance. You cannot antagonize. So if you go back to Nkrumah's era, he had some brushes with some of the chiefs,
yes,
where some of them were distilled.
Yeah.
People use it negatively, that Nkrumah distilled. But if you historically, you realize that those chiefs were antagonistic towards Nkrumah. There were even some sub-chiefs who were for CPP. The paramount chiefs were distilling them. And so Nkrumah also used the law. And then it did not just go and remove them that, hey, you are sitting here illegitimate. Certain investigations were conducted. And some of these chiefs were found to be corrupt. And they used the legality of the law and then some of the chieftaincy laws of the time to remove them after committees of inquiries have been set into some of these chiefs. I do not want to mention names because people might think you are trying to, but this is what happened. And one other thing I want to state is what my brother Nana Osapon said. You see, historians are not divided on this issue. If you take Okoye is not a historian. He is a political scientist who is in a political party. So his objectivity is long gone. In academic institution, nobody will cite writing an objective paper. You might start as partisan point with another party from, let's say, CPP point, and then you are making a case. But when you are writing as a historian, you write historians who have no partisan inclination and what they have written about the subject matter. So you realize that when I was speaking, I'm talking about the fact that Nkrumah did this, all the good things, this is the negativities they are saying.
Yeah.
If I sit here and I talk about all Nkrumah's good things, somebody will say, is he not an Nkrumahist? If I also sit here and speak all the negativities of Nkrumah, somebody will say, is he not a UP? So
but it is history we are dealing with.
Yes.
So you would have to speak to it.
That is it.
So the question is, what is your stand?
For my stand, as I have, I do not believe, first and foremost, about the approach, even taking history aside. If you do so, then it means you are legitimizing anybody who overthrows government, that it should be worshipped. Particularly with regards to the point you yourself made, that on one breath, they are criticizing the system, you are extolling the virtues of 69 coup. Yet when it comes to 66 coup, yet when it comes to the 1979, 1982, you are not very happy because of what happened. Now the question is, there was deaths. Even if you go to the 66 coup, there was death on both sides. Avevo and others also died while protecting Nkrumah's regime and so on. Ametewe, for example, when he shot Self-Degati, when he wanted to assassinate Nkrumah, what have we done for him? I get to the point. So there's a lot of contested issues. When we delve into, you realize that the argument for celebration of Kotoka was nothing but 1969 partisan thank you of the regime to the military for making it possible.
Mr. Uncle, let me tell you about the patrons. So
I know everything.
Lieutenant General J. Ankra, the chairman, JWK Halley, the police commissioner at the time, vice chairman, he's also one of the patrons. Nana Se Osea Jema Mpempe, the Asante Hene, Nia Mugi the second, the Gamanche, Nana Fuyata the second, the Ochehene, Eastern Region, Asantilo Sandeman Nab, vice president of Upper Region House of Chiefs, Nano 2, the 11th, Abakrampa Hene Central Region, the Omahini of Winchi, Nana Kusi Apia, the paramount chief of Avetime, Togbe Ajatekpo, the 6th, Mr. J. Ibrahima from the Northern Region, and the paramount chief of the Dutch Second at the time, Nana Kwamena Anesie. So that was just to put in context what we have been talking about. Anesie. But I want to ask you now, where do we go from this point?
So you realize that if you look at all the people there, and you are somebody who is well versed in the history, you can easily know that all these people were anti-Nkrumahist at the time. All of them, including the chiefs. And then you have the two of the coup makers in there. As for our champion, they wanted to have a face after the coup. If you read Justice Appeal Court judge, who at that time was a DPP, And then they even appointed him, the regime appointed him an interim attorney general. He's called A.N.E. Mr. Osteni Abiohi Ifanse. Yeah. He wrote a very important book on the contribution to the courts. He was the one the regime went to see that now they have done the coup and they needed somebody who is intellectual to craft all the sins of Nkrumah so that they can use it to read. When he went there, he has written an autobiography. I am in talk with the family to get it published. Before he didn't complete before he passed on. And the detail in that book, if it comes out. So when they went to meet Justice Emisa, Justice Emisa told them that, look, you the guys that did this coup, Ghanaians know where you are coming from. So you need a sober face to go and reflect. That is why they went to pluck Ankara out of nowhere. Yeah. So Ankara had no hand in anything they did. Yes. So they needed a neutral face.
In fact, the FIFA actually says it was him, Hale, and Kotoka. It was not that's his claim.
It was Justice Emisa who recommended. And then he wrote whatever Ankara would read and handed it to him. So that independent overthrow speech and the sins that were being, it was written by Justice Emisa. So I can assure you that the whole regime itself, they knew Ghanaians were rebel against them. Are you getting the point? So beginning, they needed a neutral face that can stand for them. Okay, because General was, at that time, he has a pedigree. Yeah. Somebody who have gone to the Congo, is a Sanders trained, and he had all the respect also from the military top brass at the time. So they brought him and he really stabilized the regime for them. That is why afterwards they tried to do their own skirmishes to remove him because he wasn't part of the original core of the coup makers.
Yeah. See, at the end of the day, my brother is in agreement with us that Kotoka's name should be removed.
Yes, but what I want to add is that
I hope you get
it. I don't think there's been enough. I think I think he put it in context and made his point. His point. I mean,
no, I am categorically clear that for Kotoka, okay, like if you read all the literature around that time, whether you like it or not, the First Republic was constitutionally elected regime. It was a constitutionally elected regime. Irrespective of the change of the constitution. Yeah. My problem there was many people make argument, okay, Nana. They make argument about the fact that there was no alternative. And when Oliver was speaking, he was saying it couldn't be done. But it was a contested election. Yeah. You could contest election. Yeah. Today in our parliament, we have almost 89 parliamentary. No, let's forget about Akwetia. I know you will contest from your.
We've not even added Akwetia.
So we have 89, okay? Bearing what your party is, you are trying to.
Super majority.
So with that super majority, a lot of things can be done, right? It can be done.
In fact, if you look at the election results from 51 all the way to 60, Nkrumah, he was a very popular candidate.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Majority of seats all over.
Let us be honest.
So I mean, just let him wrap up on the point. But I think the point you are making about the fact that the current majority can be used to achieve those ends.
Certain things, but we have also learned from the Nkrumah regime that sometimes, even if you have an overwhelming majority, there are certain way of also bringing the opposition on board towards one country. But that's why I always explain that history must be understood within the context of the time. If we use your modernist mind to go and interpret, that was the period when the idea of erecting that thing was hero worshipping idea of the time. Okay. So these people were saying, okay, we know democratically there was no leeway for us to win election. So when the coup came, then thank you for whoever has made it possible. Yeah. That is not democratic thinking.
Yeah, of course.
That is not democratic thinking. Okay. But they are seeing it as legitimate because without that cause, opportunity will not have come. And that explains the way, if you look at the full message, apart from the trustees, the full message they gave at the time, extolling the virtues of the coup makers for paving the way, bringing freedom and justice to the people.
The rebirth of freedom.
You know the sad thing, after the overthrow of Nkrumah, every single thing they accused Nkrumah of doing, they themselves did it, and they even did worse. They also deport. You have alien compliance order. Okay? They also have their own PDA, protective custody decree, which a lot of people were also arrested. And they even stay in for a very long time than the PDA. I get in the point. Look, the judiciary, Nkrumah just sang, let me see, Akufo-Addo, Akukosa, Kofi Edumwa Bosman, Henry Kwesi Prempeh. So about 5.
The Chief Justice.
The Chief Justice is Akukosa.
Yes.
You see, so 5 of them. When the regime came, Edward Akufo-Addo was made the chairman of the Judicial Services Committee. He sat over 20-something judges from the Supreme Court, starting with the Justice Julius Sarkodie-Addo, who had replaced. He himself becoming the Chief Justice. The pogrom that happened at the judicial in that time is the worst that this country has ever recorded. Saying that these justices were substandard. Meanwhile, these justices went to South Africa, became Chief Justice. Some went to East Africa, became Chief Justice. Some even returned to Ghana and became Chief Justice within 2 countries. So it shows you, if you look at the mindset around that time, workers, they also said, what is worse? You're talking about one-party state, what is worse? The 1969 Constitution, which we used to run the election, barred CPP. So that even the use of the name convention and peoples in your party name
became a problem.
It became a problem. Okay? And very many Ghanaians were disbarred. It was this result that the now National Alliance of Liberals, their leader was Komla Gbedema. When he won the elections at Anwon, what happened?
There was an election petition challenging whether he was...
Francis Awono Williams of the PP went to court and got him removed, and so on. So we need to look at history. Even within the UP tradition, C.K. Tedem stood against Lugutela in their constituency in Akasana, in the north. But Lugutela also went to court. That you, C.K. Tedem, you yourself used to be in Nkrumah, and the Committee of Inquiry report was also against you. So Tedem also lose. So if you look at the period, the kind of laws that they also even came out with to run the 69 election was anti-human rights. And I have heard Professor Michael question somewhere that the 1969 Constitution earmarked the birth of human rights. And this thing went on. Let me shock you. Look, a young man called Salifa went to visit Nkrumah in Conakry. The guy was about 19 years. When he returned, he was arrested that he is coming to engage in a coup. So he was arraigned before a court before Justice Antechi. Antechi, when they brought the gazette upon which they must use to as an evidence to jail the guy, Ankara has not signed the gazette. So Antechi threw the case out of court. He threw the case out. When the young man got out of the court, he was immediately rearrested by Victor Usu and taken to late VCRAC Scrap's court. There and there, the young man's lawyer, who was John Hedley Linus, as a result, he will later sell his law firm to Linus Kwasi Ayedan, which is a Linus Kwasi Ayedan law firm in Ghana today. The young man, by the time that case came, UP tradition had come to power. When the young man's case was supposed to be heard, SD Dombo went for the young man's lawyer, who was a British Linus Hedley, John Hedley Linus, who have been practicing law in Ghana since 1954. They deported him out of the country, and he couldn't give legal representation. The young man went to court, and VCRAC crowd says if the president has not signed, it is a minor error, and that should not deter the case from being moved forward. So the young man was finally jailed. The case is Salifa number 1, Salifa number 2. Okay. I got that points. So these things have happened even within these two regimes. That most of the things, as I sit here, if you look at chronology of events after the Nkrumah's overthrow and what they did, it casts even shadow over some of the things Nkrumah is being accused of. And so therefore, from this evidence, I know you cannot even say Kotoka did Ghana any favor, so that he should be celebrated. But my problem is one: we had PNP. I got in that point. Yeah. At least Achampon did very well. He was able to negotiate for the return of Nkrumah's body that has been buried in Guinea. Yeah. He negotiated for that. Yeah. He tried to bring the wife back home and the children. Yeah. What he stopped short of was correction with regard to Kotoka's issue. Yeah. In 1979, we had the opportunity of People's National Party, which is Nkrumah's party, led by Dr. Hillary Liman. Yeah. I believe that was the best opportunity to that they're supposed to have really changed this sort of thing, but maybe they had a short lifespan. Yeah, they were just 2 years, almost 2 years in office, and they went. Now he said something very remarkable. This government, NDC government, if you look at its architecture, Rawlings was never an Nkrumahist. Yes, I mean there are public statements that is made in the past that people have made reference to. And you look at NDC today, it's an amalgamation of people. If you look at from the PNDC days, people from somewhere, even from the Dankwa tradition, somewhere, so A.M. Munufie and others. Yeah. So I guess the point you're making is not quite clear cut. Yes, Idrisu, many people from the Dankwa tradition who came to join the NDC, PNDC, and then they transformed into the NDC today. So you cannot look at NDC. However, some of their leaders, like Professor Mills, he had Nkrumah's training. And John Mahama, his father, was also a stint with the the Nkrumah's tradition. And as a result, you are likely to see that he has sympathies. And I like the word he used. They have that sympathies because they were not members of that party. So what I can say is that this moment discussion is the best we could ever have. And we should be open-minded and understand that there are certain criteria which he really talked about. He also spoke about. If you are putting something there in history, we call something material culture or historical markers. If I go to see a statue immediately after airport, as soon as that thing is standing, somebody will ask, who is this man? And there has to be some history. Then there must be history. Oh, this man overthrew Nkrumah. For what? I wonder people who are even given the task to explain this, what kind of interpretation? I mean, that would be a tall order for them. And so, I mean, that is a discussion that has just started, and we know that it will continue for a while now to come. And so, that is it by way of our first discussion on the Kotoka issue. We'll just do a brief discussion on the second issue that we wanted to touch on, and it has to do with the recent, what many have described as an anti-corruption drive by the government to try and hold former government appointees accountable. On Saturday, Sunday, former government officials were being invited here and there, were being asked various questions, various contracts, and all other issues that have come up. And the National Intelligence Bureau playing an active role in all of this. And I want to start that discussion with you, Nana, Mr. Sapon. I want to start with you on this. I mean, earlier when we had a discussion some weeks back, you were quite all for the importance of accountability.
I still am for it. I believe that people or leadership should be held accountable for stewardship. If you have been given the resources of a country to work with, you should account for it, every single penny, every single dime. But
I have had a problem with the operations that were taken by the NIB this weekend. My problem I have had with them is when they have gone under the disguise of inviting individuals. All right, so you go to their houses, invite them, then they willingly follow you. And when they have given their statements whatsoever, and then you tell them they are under arrest and you keep them, and they will now have to find their lawyers to come and then bail them and all of that. The procedures are clear. Where we stand today in Ghana, every single individual, every young man wants accountability. People have led this country and have lived certain lives that they cannot account. There is no lifestyle audit in this nation. And when these people are being called to account for the stewardship of the offices they were given, we would applaud it. But procedures are procedures.
I mean, are you comfortable with the involvement
if you go to the court to get a warrant to arrest an individual because you do not have the capacity to arrest the person, nobody would fault you. If you go with the police and they go by their constitutional regulations to arrest an individual, nobody would fault you for it. But when you have gone under the pretense of inviting the person, a wrong is wrong. And I'm saying this because it can happen to anybody. All right. Now, and I would use Professor Amir Kumfi's case as an example. I do not think in any ways that he is the prime suspect in the SkyTrain deal. If others are being written to come and give a testimony or a statement or to help in investigations on this same issue, how then do you drive into this old man's house on a Sunday morning when he's preparing to go to church? Invite him, he willingly follows you, and then you detain him in custody. I would not want that to happen to me. There are procedures, let us follow it. We are not in those days again.
Are you comfortable with the involvement of the NIB? And I'm asking because
if they have the mandate, why not? If theirs is to gather information, and on the prima facie, when they have been able to identify that crime has been committed, I think per the regulations, they invite the police to now arrest. Am I right? And then they process you for court. You get it? But my problem is how they go about their operations.
Okay.
You see, you do not go into somebody's compound with mask on. In today's Ghana, you don't do that. Yeah. Because there are people who are licensed to hold or protect themselves. So tomorrow, if you go into somebody's house with mask on, the person is not able to identify or differentiate between you, who is from the state agency doing your work, and that person who has come to commit crime. State institutions need and ought to work by their proceedings.
Okay.
There's so much exuberance when they have been given small power to work with. Why would an NIB agent mask to undertake an operation? What are you afraid of? That is your work. You have been trained to do that. As for the accountability, people must be held accountable. Eh? People must pay the monies back.
Okay.
We have dug a hole of $58 million. Somebody must pay back that money.
All right.
If indeed these ghost names are ghost names, I mean, yeah, somebody must pay the money. I was doing some little calculation with some individuals some time back. I said that with that amount of money, if I get even $10 million for my constituency, Bekwai, Mikrum Dominase. You know I'm from Bekwai. Yes. And Dominase was the first to have a hospital and tools on that stretch, the SDA hospital. It needs to be renovated. I want to go and even appeal to the health minister. Joe Timia, health minister, I beg you, I'll be coming. The SDA hospital needs help.
Okay.
Do we know what $10 million could have done there? And this $10 million is going to somebody's pocket. I am not interested in the person being jailed.
The recovery.
I am interested in the person paying back that money. The other punishments can come.
Okay.
But we should take back our money.
All right.
You understand me? So that people will not, will not have the appetite. The appetite comes when they know they are going into jail for 5-10 years and they will come back and still enjoy the money.
From what they have been able to amass.
The appetite comes or would continue when they know that the monies they have stolen would be used for investment and their families would enjoy.
Okay.
All right, but you would kill their appetite.
Okay.
If those investments are taken back, if those monies are recovered, not just them being in jail, because someone is full.
All right.
We are, after I've read a piece where the prisons services even needs some help to be able to expand our prisons. The place is full. They should give us back our money.
Okay.
And that we need to create jobs. We are talking about industrialization. If you want to industrialize, it means that you need to work on your infrastructure.
Okay.
And if we have to do infrastructure, it's capital investment. And it is cash.
We need money for that. I mean, Delali, I mean, he makes the very important point that some have raised about the procedure and the importance of ensuring that it's not seen as a government that maybe is too much in a hurry to clamp down on political opponents. I mean, what do you make of that concern?
For me, what is more instructive is the President Mahama that I know, a man of such stature, a man of such disposition, would not definitely be that kind of a leader who will be so much in want to persecute political opponents or want to more or less sidestep processes when it comes to dealing with SWAL government appointees. So whatever the mishap is, I believe that it will come to the attention of the authorities and they will basically address it. Because what we are currently witnessing, I've had an opportunity to talk to even non-MPP people, and they continue to talk about the fact that indeed President Mahama continued to demonstrate that indeed he is the gentleman that Ghanaians see him to be. So whatever, if indeed in the course of the operations of the NIB, there's excesses or maybe there's an unfortunate procedure, I believe it will be checked and it will be amended accordingly. For me, what is quite instructive is the fact that I've had the opportunity to watch a documentary relative to the National Service scandal. And I've also had the opportunity, prior to the election, I mean, anytime we come on your show, one of the corruption cases that we continue to highlight was this issue about the sky trade. One has to also do with the cathedral.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, I am not surprised with respect to what is emerging. Relative to the National Service scandal, when you read the reports, when you watch the documentary, the last time I watched it on your show, when the Media Foundation from West Africa was basically doing a demonstration with respect to how, what I call it, choreographed TV, right? Stage against the states. I mean, for me, if you're a Ghanaian and you love this country, you appreciate the fact that indeed it was good that Ghanaians shown the ex-regime the exit. I mean, you are talking about 81,000 ghost names. You are talking about instances people had age of 91, 93 years, right? You're talking about creating fake identity numbers, fake PIN numbers. You're talking about even somebody called Husseini Abubakar, whose name appeared more than 1,000 plus times. The same individual was drawing allowances every month.
Okay.
And I feel that it doesn't matter whether you are NDC or NPP. Even if you are an NPP communicator, for once, be on the side of Ghana and not a political party.
Okay.
Because you see, like my brother Sapon was basically talking about, see, if you have traversed, right, the length and breadth of this country, you will not allow any individual, right, to embezzle even 1 million Ghana cedis of the taxpayers' money. If you have traveled the length and breadth of this country, where people are literally sharing water with animals, where kids, recently we watched a video where a young guy have to carry the sister to cross a stream.
Yeah.
If you're a conscionable human being, if you are somebody who is a patriotic Ghanaian, who loves this country, and you watch such an emotionally downhearted videos, you will not come and sit down here and defend anybody who is involved in this crime against the state. You will not defend anybody.
I mean,
for me, you see, for instance, we pay an amount of $2 million, right, for a SkyTrain. Where is it? For me, when you just hear about some kilometer away from us, we dug a hole.
Okay.
Spending $58 million. Okay. Do you know how much $58 million can do?
It can do a lot.
President Mahama recently said we need almost about 1.something billion to complete the agenda 111. Okay. The only one they complete was one. So you see, and when you ask them, they'll tell you, listen, we didn't have the necessary resource, we didn't have the funding for it. Okay. Yet, group of people, right, sat right within the National Service Secretariat, right, choreograph, stage, right, plan.
All those are.
No, you see.
No, the point I was going to make is that all those are fine. All those are matters that the National Intelligence
absolutely
Bureau
they are dealing with,
and all the various agencies are going to investigate and come up with. So let's see how that goes.
For me, any individual who try to defend this thinking corrupt act, for me, I think that person, right, is worse than somebody who have committed treason against this country.
Okay, let me wrap up with Mr. Ankro on this. And the question I'm asking you is that you are a historian. From 66 till now, when there's change on government, you can stick a bet that there will be arrest and an attempt to go after the opponents. How do you process all of this?
Yes. So back in the day, if it is a military, we wouldn't be sitting here to discuss. You will be cooling off in the cooler. So that one was a different ball game. That one, whether you have a lawyer or not, everything is because the constitution is suspended. But in the military regime, certain attempts were made. The constitutional regime, certain attempts were made to, look back to people who have done. But fortunately, for us, the first time we have civilian handed over to a civilian was in the year 2000. Okay, and we saw during President Kufuor's transition, they found a very nice way of arresting people who were involved. And they used to, I remember in those days, the word they use all the time is invitation. Okay, you are invited to. Okay, so you are invited here. And we saw successful prosecutions to the Salome's case with Dr. Ousubwedu on the fast track high court. And what happened, we know about Pepra and others, and so on. Joyce Payanki and others cases, that also went on around that time. So the arrest, for me, my brother, when he was speaking, you see, he was very gentle when he was talking about.
Yeah, eventually the tone picked up.
President Mohammed's approach. Yeah. You could see from his own voice that indeed the manner of arresting or inviting has not been the best. And I think, to a very large extent, this government have started well, but they are also allowing the exuberance Nana talks about to to take hold of some people.
Okay.
Starting with the gentleman that went to Foriate's place. And then why will you disguise yourself when there is opportunity for you? Because look, the opportunity NDC have gotten today, they stand a better chance if they make democracy work. They themselves will be beneficiary of it in the near future. They shouldn't spoil things for themselves. So in inviting people,
okay,
make it nice. If they are corrupt, kindly help to bring them. At the end of the day, corruption is something that this government should fight tooth and nail to ensure anybody in the former administration who has willingly corrupted himself or herself must be brought to book, because indeed something went wrong. And Ghanaians, even some people within MPP, want the right thing to be done.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. And so you just heard from Kweku Daku Ankra. He's a historian. Unfortunately, that's what our time will allow us. You can just do that very quickly.
You asked a question. That, is it the NIB or should the police have done this? This will take me back to the Great Transformational Plan, where we ought to be able to come together to rather establish an anti-corruption czar, rather than having all of these state agencies.
All over
and
the
at
place.
the end of the day, you don't even know which one is handling what.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. But if we have consolidated all of them into an anti-corruption czar and giving them a framework to work with,
okay,
you understand me?
Yeah.
We will not be here.
Okay. So that is Nana Yao Sapon. He belongs to the Movement for Change, a senior political aide to Alan Kojo Chairman, and no surprise he threw the Great Transformational Plan in there. Delali Sewakpo is a member of the NDC communications team. He joined us as well. Earlier, you heard from Oliver Baka Vomawo, who is a convener for Democracy Hub. And just before we go, the ICGC Calvary Temple is hosting Reverend Eastwood Anaba on Wednesday, the 26th to Friday, 28th February at the ICGC Calvary Temple at Spintex, and the time is at 6:30 p.m. And also Sunday, 2nd March 2025 at 8 a.m., the special 41st anniversary Thanksgiving. Come celebrate Jesus and his love. And so that is an event to mark on your calendar to participate in that. Oh, that's interesting.
Happy birthday to Eddie.
Yes,
he shouldn't pretend that he's working. You understand? Today is his birthday. He shouldn't pretend that he'll be working. Wherever the party is,
we are going to find him.
We will find him.
Okay. we wish him very well. We wish him very well. And so that's our discussion this morning. I am Joseph Akable. The show continues. I'm told today is World Cookie Day. So you guess what? Bring all your gifts all over the place.
Her birthday too.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday.
Download OneXBet app and enjoy the variety of sports anytime, anywhere. OneXBet app, at the heart of the game.
Through every step of life's unpredictable journey, every moment counts. That's why you need a partner you can always trust for solutions, so you can be rest assured. Having impacted over 200,000 lives, processed over 4.2 million claims, partnered with over 400 corporations, paid out over 836 million Ghana cedis in claims, contracted over 1,600 healthcare facilities nationwide, and pioneered several innovations like free medicine delivery, an interactive mobile app, and more. You'll be surprised what can be accomplished in 20 years. We're part of the Nationwide family. Are you? Nationwide Medical Insurance. 20 years of leading the way.
You'll ever taste.
Hi, baby.
Hi, Mom.
Hope you're having fun at Granny's.
Yeah, but Grandma doesn't have my favorite top chocolate spread.
Hi, Mom. Mommy, please, I missed up chocolate spread on bread.